The mysterious SOS. Deep in space, in a quiet sector of the galaxy, a massive space station floated in darkness. It was Earth's Deep Space Listening Post 47, a hidden outpost designed to monitor deep space signals. The crew stationed there lived in silence, watching and waiting for anything unusual. For months, there was nothing. Just the usual static, small transmissions from distant colonies, and weak signals from lost probes. Then, on a night like any other, something changed. A loud alarm echoed through the station, waking everyone. The communication officer, Lieutenant Harris, ran to his console, eyes wide. "Commander, we have a signal, an emergency distress call," he shouted. Commander Reynolds, an experienced officer with gray hair and sharp eyes, leaned over the screen. The signal was weak, broken, and filled with static. Through the distortion, a voice was pleading. "Please, help. They are coming. No time. They air." The message cut off. The screen flickered, showing coordinates. Silence filled the control room. "Who sent this?" Reynolds asked. Harris shook his head. "Unknown origin. But the location. It's in uncharted space, outside any known territory." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. A distress call from deep, uncharted space. It could be a trap, but it could also be a desperate call for help. Reynolds straightened. "Prepare a report. Send this to Earth Command immediately." Earth responds. On Earth, the message reached the United Terran Defense Council within minutes. The highest-ranking military officials gathered in a classified meeting. Admiral Carter, a strict and battle-hardened leader, played the transmission on a large screen. The voice echoed through the room again. "Please, help. They are coming." Silence followed. General Vasquez crossed his arms. Could be a pirate trick, or worse, an enemy trap. Dr. Lin, a scientist from the intelligence division, shook her head. "No, the energy signature of this message, it's old. And it's alien." The room tensed. First contact with an unknown race. And they were in danger. Admiral Carter exhaled. "We can't ignore this." "Agreed." Vasquez nodded. "But we're not sending a full fleet. Too risky. We'll send a small reconnaissance team. See what's out there." Within hours, the recon fleet, call sign Omega 7, was deployed. It consisted of 3 scout ships: the Valkyrie, the Phantom, and the Sentinel. Their mission was clear: find the source of the SOS, investigate, return safely. The journey into the unknown. Captain Daniel Mercer stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie, staring at the glowing coordinates on the screen. "Set course," he ordered. The ship hummed as the engines roared to life. Within minutes, the 3 ships jumped into hyperspace, heading into the unknown. The journey was smooth at first. Stars blurred past as the fleet moved deeper into space. But after a few hours, something felt off. Lieutenant Avery, the ship's tactical officer, checked her console. "Captain, I'm picking up unusual energy readings ahead. Something's there." "Can you identify it?" Mercer asked. She shook her head. "No, but it's big." As they dropped out of hyperspace, a terrifying sight unfolded before them. A massive field of wreckage. Shattered ships floated in the void, some torn in half, others completely vaporized. The scene was silent, yet it told a story of total destruction. Mercer's stomach tightened. What the hell happened here? The Sentinel's pilot, over the radio, whispered, "This wasn't a battle. This was a massacre." Avery gasped. "Sir, life signs detected. Weak, but someone is alive in that wreckage." Mercer's eyes narrowed. "Prepare a rescue team. Move in carefully. I want answers." As the team moved forward, something shifted in the shadows of a destroyed ship. And then, the scanners picked up something huge, moving toward them. The silent graveyard. The wreckage stretched for miles, a silent graveyard of ships. Some were shattered beyond recognition, others still flickered with dying power. Captain Mercer stood frozen on the bridge of the Valkyrie, his eyes locked on the chaos before him. "What happened here?" whispered Lieutenant Avery, scanning the debris field. Before anyone could answer, a weak signal crackled through the comms. Help. Anyone. Please." The voice was faint, barely more than a whisper, but it was human. "We've got survivors," Mercer barked. "Launch a rescue team. Now." The shuttle Raven detached from the Valkyrie, carefully weaving through the wreckage. Lieutenant Kayla Torres led the team, her hands tight on the controls. "Stay sharp," she warned. "We don't know what did this." As they drifted closer, the damage became horrifyingly clear. One ship, marked U.S. Aegis, was split down the middle. Deep claw-like gouges ran along the hull. Something hadn't just destroyed these ships. It had torn them apart. Torres swallowed hard. This wasn't a battle. This was a slaughter. The shuttle docked with the most intact ship. Inside, the air was thick with smoke, and the flickering emergency lights painted the halls in a ghostly red glow. Torres and her team moved carefully, weapons raised, no signs of life. Then, a soft metallic scraping echoed down the corridor. Torres held up a fist. "Hold. Did you hear that?" Silence. Then, a weak voice from behind a sealed door. "Please, help." The team rushed forward. A survivor. Torres pressed the intercom. "We're here to help." "Hold on." They forced the door open. Inside was a man in a torn uniform, his face pale, eyes wide with terror. "Who are you? What happened?" Torres asked. The man struggled to speak. "They're still here." Torres frowned. "Who?" Before he could answer, the lights flickered violently. Then, a deep, guttural, clicking sound echoed through the ship. The man's eyes widened in horror. "Run," he screamed. A shadow moved at the end of the hallway. Something was coming. A deadly warning. Back on the Valkyrie, Captain Mercer's heart pounded as the distress call from Torres came through. "Captain, we found a survivor, but something's static." Then a single blood-chilling word. "Hunters." Mercer's blood ran cold. The scanners flared with movement. Not wreckage, not dead ships. Predators. Something had been watching them the whole time. And now, it was hunting. "All ships, battle stations, get our people out of there," Mercer shouted. But before anyone could move, a massive, terrifying shape emerged from the debris. For the first time, Earth's fleet saw what had done this. And it wasn't human. The hunters in the dark. The moment the scanners lit up, Captain Mercer knew they had walked into a trap. The wreckage field wasn't just debris, it was a hunting ground. And now, the hunters had found them. "Raise shields. Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Mercer barked. The Valkyrie's engines roared to life, but something massive moved in the shadows. The ship's floodlights flickered across the debris, illuminating a monstrous shape, twisted, armored, and watching. It wasn't a ship. It was alive. On the abandoned vessel, Torres and her team didn't have time to process the survivor's warning before the power died completely. The emergency lights blinked out. The ship plunged into darkness. Then, footsteps. Heavy, slow, deliberate. Torres's breathing turned shallow. She activated her wrist light. The beam cut through the dark, landing on clawed footprints. Still wet, still fresh. The survivor grabbed her arm, shaking. "You don't understand," he whispered. "They don't kill for food. They kill for sport." The words sent a chill through her spine. From the shadows, a pair of gleaming red eyes blinked open. Then another, and another. Torres barely had time to react before a low, rumbling growl echoed through the corridor. Then, they charged. The fight for survival. The first hunter moved like a blur, slashing at the closest Marine. Blood sprayed the wall before the man could even scream. Torres fired. Her plasma shot barely scratched its armor. "Fall back. Fall back." she shouted. They ran, dragging the survivor with them, the sounds of the hunters' chittering laughter ringing in their ears. These creatures weren't just attacking. They were toying with them, a desperate escape. Back on the Valkyrie, Mercer could hear the screams over the comms. "We're being hunted. We need extraction now," Torres yelled. Mercer didn't hesitate. "All firepower on those things. Get my people out." The ship's turrets lit up, sending barrages of plasma into the wreckage. The vacuum of space lit with explosions. But the creatures were fast. Too fast. And then, something slammed into the ship. The hull groaned under the impact. Alarms blared. Mercer turned to the screen. Through the debris, one of the creatures was clinging to the ship's hull, its razor-sharp limbs punching through reinforced metal like paper. And it was looking right at him. Then it lunged. No way out. The moment the hunter latched onto the Valkyrie, Mercer knew they were in trouble. Its razor-sharp limbs tore into the hull, sparks flying as metal groaned under its weight. The thing tilted its head, as if studying them, as if it knew they were watching. Then, with inhuman speed, it lunged for the bridge window. "Fire! Now!" Mercer roared. A deafening blast shook the ship as the point defense cannons unleashed hell, tearing through the creature. Its black blood splattered across the hull as it was blown into the void. But then, more red eyes blinked open in the wreckage. Dozens. No, hundreds. They had just announced their presence. And now, the hunt was in full force. Trapped on the wrecked ship, Torres and her team were running out of time. The corridors twisted like a maze, and the hunters moved like shadows, always one step ahead. "They're cutting us off," one Marine yelled. Torres gritted her teeth. "Then we make our own way." She pulled out a plasma charge, slamming it onto a sealed bulkhead. "Stand back." A blinding explosion blasted the door open, revealing the shuttle bay on the other side. Their way out. But before they could move, a massive claw slammed down in front of them. The biggest of the hunters stepped through the smoke, its armored body glistening under the emergency lights. 7 feet tall, broad, muscular, its face was hidden behind a bone-white mask. It raised a massive, jagged blade, tapping it against the floor, taunting them. Torres knew what this was. A challenge. A duel. The captain's gambit. Back on the Valkyrie, Mercer's mind raced. They couldn't win this fight. But maybe they didn't have to. Tactical. Target the largest wreck in this field. His second-in-command frowned. "Sir, if we can't escape the trap, we bring it down on their heads." A moment of silence. Then, a grim nod. Mercer turned to the comms. "Torres, you've got 60 seconds. We're collapsing the battlefield." She didn't argue. "Understood, Captain. Just try not to kill us in the process." A fight to the death. The hunter in the bone mask charge. Torres barely dodged in time, the blade carving deep into the wall behind her. She rolled, fired 3 shots, all deflected with unnatural speed. The creature laughed, a guttural clicking sound. Then it struck again. Faster, stronger, unstoppable. Torres could barely keep up. Her team couldn't help her. This was her fight. But then, a sharp whistle echoed through the bay. The hunter paused, head snapping toward the survivor they had rescued. He had picked up a broken piece of alien tech, gripping it like a weapon. His face was twisted with fury. "You want sport?" He spat. "Then fight someone who already knows your tricks." For the first time, the hunter hesitated. And that's when Torres struck. She grabbed a fallen blade from one of its dead kin, twisted her body, and drove it straight into the creature's throat. A sickening crack echoed as the hunter staggered back, clutching its wound. Then, it collapsed. The other hunters screeched in fury. But before they could avenge their fallen warrior, the Valkyrie opened fire. Hell collapses. The main cannons fired at full power, hitting the largest derelict ship in the field. The entire wreckage began to cave in. Explosions rippled through the battlefield as massive metal hulks collided, crushing everything in their path. The hunters screeched in panic. Their trap had become their own tomb. "Taurus now," Mercer yelled. The rescue team rushed into their shuttle. As the wreckage collapsed around them, the shuttle blasted out of the debris field at full speed. Just in time, a final explosion ripped through the remains of the battlefield. And then, silence. The secret they died for. The battlefield was silent. The shattered remains of the alien fleet drifted in the void, twisted metal and lifeless ships tumbling through the darkness. The hunters were dead, crushed beneath the wreckage of their own trap. The Valkyrie had survived, but barely. Yet, even as the immediate danger faded, Mercer knew something was wrong. Why had this distress call been sent? What had been so important that an entire fleet died trying to protect it? He turned to the survivor, the lone alien they had rescued. "You knew what those creatures were," Mercer said, voice steady, "and they knew you." The alien, still clutching his wounds, hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he muttered, "We were never meant to find this place." A hidden transmission. The Valkyrie's scanners picked up a faint signal, buried deep within the wreckage. Not just any signal, a coded transmission, one still broadcasting on an ancient frequency. Torres frowned at the data. "Sir, this isn't a distress beacon. This is something else." Mercer didn't like the sound of that. "Can we decrypt it?" The tech officer hesitated. "It's human, sir." The entire bridge fell silent. Human. But that was impossible. No human ship had ever traveled this far. Yet the transmission was unmistakably Earthborn, encrypted in an old military code that hadn't been used in over 100 years. "This doesn't make sense," Torres murmured. Mercer's jaw tightened. "Then let's find out why." A forgotten warning. As the transmission played, a grainy voice filled the bridge. A man's voice. "This is Commander Elias Vaughn of the UNSC Vanguard. If you are receiving this, then God help you." A chill ran through the room. The voice continued, laced with exhaustion. "This sector was never meant to be found. We thought we could control it. We were wrong." Static crackled. "They are not alive. They are not machines. They are something else." The entire crew was frozen in place. "If you are listening, turn back. Destroy this message. Leave no trace." Then, after a pause, "And whatever you do, do not wake them." The signal cut off. The bridge remained silent. No one moved. Then Torres spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, I don't think we killed them all. A ship that shouldn't exist." Mercer's gut twisted. Where did that transmission originate? The tech officer scanned the system, face pale. "It's coming from down there." A display lit up, revealing the true source of the signal. A massive derelict ship, half buried in the wreckage. Not alien, not unknown. Human. A ship that should not exist. One that had been lost for over a century. And its signal was still transmitting. Something was still alive down there. Or worse, something was waiting. The ghost ship. The wreckage of the UNSC Vanguard loomed ahead, half buried in the debris of fallen ships. It was massive. A forgotten titan from a war no human remembered. Its hull was cracked and scorched, ancient wounds from battles fought long before the Valkyrie had ever set course for this system. But despite its ruin, it was still transmitting. Mercer felt a chill crawl up his spine as he studied the readings. How? This ship had been missing for over a century. No one knew what had happened to it. No distress calls had ever reached Earth. No survivors had ever returned. Yet here it was. And the warning from Commander Vaughn still echoed in his mind. "If you are listening, turn back. Destroy this message. Leave no trace, and whatever you do, do not wake them." Mercer clenched his fists. Something was wrong, but they had come too far to turn back now. A silent welcome. Docking procedures were risky. Half the ship's hull was unstable, and there was no guarantee the docking bay was intact. But there was no other choice. As the Valkyrie's shuttle maneuvered toward the airlock, Torres swallowed hard. "Sir, what if the message wasn't a warning?" Mercer shot him a look. "What are you saying?" Torres hesitated. What if it was a trap? Before Mercer could respond, the shuttle locked into place. The doors hissed. Atmosphere readings flickered. Then, with a deep groan, the airlock opened. Darkness greeted them. The ship was dead silent. No emergency lights. No movement. Nothing. Yet the air was still breathable. Something had kept this place intact. Something had kept it waiting. Footsteps in the dark. Mercer led the team inside, weapons at the ready. Their boots echoed across the metal floor, swallowed by the oppressive silence. The corridors stretched into pitch-black emptiness. No bodies, no signs of life, no evidence of what had happened here. Only the dust of a century-old secret. Torres scanned the walls, his voice tight. This place should be a graveyard. It wasn't. There was no blood, no skeletons, no signs of struggle. As if the crew had simply vanished. A red light flickered ahead. A single weak signal pulsing from an ancient console. Mercer approached cautiously, wiping a thick layer of dust from the screen. The interface flickered to life. One message remained in the system. One last entry. The last transmission. A video log played. A dimly lit room appeared, barely visible through static. A man stood in the darkness, eyes hollow. Commander Elias Vaughn. But something was wrong. His uniform was tattered, his face pale and stretched thin, like he hadn't slept in weeks. "To whoever finds this, you've made a mistake." His voice was hoarse, filled with exhaustion. "We didn't understand what we found here. We thought we could control it. We were wrong." Static crackled. Asterisk, asterisk. "They let us in. They watched us. And when we tried to leave," asterisk, asterisk, he swallowed hard. "They took us." A shadow moved behind him. Something not human. Vaughn's breath hitched. His eyes darted toward the darkness behind him. "I shouldn't have sent the signal." A long silence. Then his last words. "If you're still here, you already know it's too late." The screen glitched. The transmission cut. And then the ship's lights flickered on. The corridors that had been empty were empty no longer. Something was moving in the dark. Something had been waiting. And now it knew they were here. The awakening. Something has awakened. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows along the corridor. The crew of the Valkyrie stood frozen, their weapons drawn, breath shallow. Something was here. Torres' fingers trembled over the trigger. "Sir, what the hell was that?" Mercer didn't answer. He was too focused on the silence that followed. Then, a metallic clang. Distant, hollow, moving closer. The ship had been dead for a century. Nothing should be moving, but something was. Echoes of the past. The transmission from Commander Vaughn still echoed in Mercer's mind. "They took us." What did that mean? Taken where? By who? He gritted his teeth. They had to move. "Stay close. No one separates. We find the source of that signal and get the hell out." The crew advanced, their boots silent against the dust-covered floor. Every step felt like walking through a forgotten tomb. Until they saw it. A door at the end of the corridor, half open, its reinforced steel bent outward, as if something had forced its way out. Torres swallowed hard. "That doesn't look good." Mercer ignored him and stepped forward. The nameplate on the door was barely readable under the grime. Cryo Bay 12. Not alone anymore. Inside, rows of ancient cryopods lined the walls. Some were shattered, their glass cracked and empty. Others still hummed faintly, frost clinging to their edges. One pod remained intact, the only one still occupied. Mercer wiped the glass with his glove. Inside, a man lay suspended in cryostasis, pale, unmoving. Then his eyes snapped open. The power across the ship surged. Red emergency lights bathed the room in an eerie glow. A distant alarm began to blare. And a voice echoed through the ship's speakers. Unauthorized presence detected. Awakening protocol engage. A horrible realization crashed down on Mercer. This wasn't just a distress signal. It was a warning. And they had just triggered something far worse than they had imagined. The nightmare begins. The ship lurched violently. Torres stumbled, gripping a console. What the hell is happening? Then the screams began. Not human screams. They came from the darkness. Deep, guttural sounds, echoing through the corridors. Something had been sleeping on this ship. Something that wasn't human. And now, it was awake. Mercer's radio crackled. A whisper came through. A voice they all recognized. "You should have left. Commander Vaughn." But Vaughn was dead.